Hello singers! Today I want to do a very special video specifically talking about my thoughts and what I took out from my sessions with the great legendary tenor Salvatore Fisichella. This just might be one of the most insightful videos as far as a whole overview of vocal technique. What his thoughts are, how I've been able to apply them and still continue to apply them, what I thought about the things he said, and then our conversations before and after the session about vocal technique, singers, singing today. So one thing to keep in mind is that, Salvatore is literally one of the last remnants, one of the few remnants of the old school of traditional Italian singing. We're talking about the golden age of opera here. Not all these other people that claim to be or teach old traditional Italian school and then they sound like this. None of that, none of that. You have to realize that Salvatore Fisichella's contemporaries, his colleagues, the people who he sang with and even stepped in for, singers like Luciano Pavarotti. He stepped in for Luciano many times. Alfredo Kraus sang with Mirella Freni, Joan Sutherland. I mean, just listen to that voice. It's incredible. We talked about his inspirations, as a fan, I really wanted to know what was his inspirations as far as the voice. Who were his idols? So obviously, names like Caruso, Gilli, Lauri Volpi, those were really his top three. And I also talked about who were the singers perhaps he admired the most that he saw live. The two that really came to mind for him were Jussi Björling, of course, another legendary tenor, and Nikolai Gedda, which I wasn't surprised because I see a lot of certain similarities between the vocal technique of Gedda and Salvatore. I have to say that I believe I met Salvatore Fisichella and I had a lesson with Salvatore at the perfect time. If it would have been a year before or 2 years before, I would not have understood 90% of the things he was talking about. And I don't mean because of the language barrier. Yes, my Italian is not the best, but I mean the concepts, the overall structure of his vocal technique. And I know that if it wasn't because of all the work I've done in the past, I probably would have walked out of there completely hoarse. Salvatore will just never isolate any concepts for you. He will stand there and say, ah, 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 ah. And if you don't do it right, he's just gonna keep drilling on you until you somehow luckily try to guess it correctly. Because I'm in a point where I have isolated a lot of concepts, isolate, work on just this concept, then move on to the next, work on that concept, and then put them together. Because that's my style, working gradually, I was able to grasp the concepts he talked about. By the way, for those of you who are interested in watching the full 40-minute session of me and Salvatore Fisichella, I'm gonna drop a link below in the description. Click on the link, become an advanced member, and you'll have access to the members-only video of me and Salvatore Fisichella. So with that being said, let's talk about it. First things first, we talked about appoggio, breathing technique. And funny enough, perhaps one of the easiest concepts to comprehend. Just takes a little time and practice. Old Italian traditional school of singing breathes thoracically, expanding the intercostals to take a deep breath. It's an extension of how you would normally breathe when you speak, he says, or when you sleep. On a step-by-step basis, this is what's happening. Step number one, we breathe in, and we turn on the voice. We open the throat. As breath comes in, we start to lower the larynx and the throat is now open. All the chambers of resonance start to get active. That's like the on button. You cannot sing if you don't open the throat. It's like turning the TV on. You cannot watch TV unless you grab the remote control and turn on the TV. That's your on button. As that is happening, we need to think expanding the intercostals. The intercostals run throughout your body, back, sides, front. They wrap your body around, okay? These should expand. They expand laterally, they expand a little forward, they expand a little backwards. That's why a lot of singers sometimes say, oh, I feel it in my back when I breathe. Yes, because your ribs wrap around your body and they expand. So as we're expanding our intercostals, the diaphragm is able to lower deeply. Our lungs, simultaneously, are starting to get full of air. And because they're being filled with air, we feel our belly also expanding. That's step number one. That's the inhale. That's easy, very easy. Most of you, if you have a empty floor, can put your backs flat on the floor, eyes staring at the ceiling. Grab your hands so you can grab a water bottle or something like that, and you can rest them around the navel area. And you can really feel with your hands how the entire body is expanding. Expand. That's the inhale process. The exhalation process. Now that we're full of air, what we want to do is we want to tuck our belly in. Oh, that sounds familiar. Tuck our belly in. And as we tuck our belly in, there's this in and up motion to it. This is going to be our springboard. This is what's going to continue the diaphragm, squeezing the lungs out of the air so that the air can pass through the cords at a very steady, slow rate, but full of pressure and energy. So again, we inhale, spread the intercostals, our lungs are full of air, our belly expands. We now tuck the bottom of the belly in, and now we start thinking. We use this verticality, right? Feeling like up and down. The diaphragm is ascending upwards. This tuck and up is we're feeling the ascension of the diaphragm as it's squeezing the lungs out of the air, and the air is going through the cords in a very steady stream of pressurized air. If you have a hose, it would be like putting it in the jet setting. Not the mist. We're not blowing through air. No. We want an element of support, of anchoring. Now, you may ask, where is this support? Well, for Salvatore and for myself, is right below the chest, the epigastric region. This is the place where you lean. And the way you can find this is understanding that the human body, whenever it releases a pressurized stream of air, such as when we sneeze, when we cough, when we yell, when we puff, a pressurized amount of air, the epigastric region will always protrude. And that's where our anchoring, our appoggio, our lean will be. Sneezing, coughing, puffing air, calling out for someone. Ha 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 ha. I am not doing this. I am not physically flexing, squeezing, pushing out any. I am not doing any of that. This is a natural reaction of the body, allowing a pressurized release of air to be expelled from the body. Ha 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 ha. Ah 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 ah. So that is where our appoggio lies. As the bottom of the belly is being tucked in and we're feeling this pull, 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 pull as the diaphragm is ascending, here is where the sound leans, except instead of just activating it for just a split of a second when we sneeze or cough or yell, ha, 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 we're going to sustain that position, because everything we do when it comes to singing is sustaining a natural process of the body. So, fraction of a second, ha, 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 singing. Ha, ha, ha. As I am feeling the lean there, I am feeling the diaphragm and the tuck ascend. This tuck and ascension is your breath control. So to review again, step 1, inhalation. We open the throat. As the air is coming in, we expand the intercostals, laterally, behind, all over the body. I personally feel it laterally more than anything. This allows the lungs to get full of air and the diaphragm to descend as deep as it can. That's the inhalation process. Now, I'm going to tell the people at home, do it with me. And once you finish the inhalation process, I'm going to tell you hold your breath. So inhale and hold your breath. Now I want you to do the belly tuck as you're holding your breath. Do the belly tuck and start thinking of this pull upwards. If you're holding your breath, you're probably going to feel a certain amount of pressure here, underneath the cords. Why? This is because anytime we take a breath and the lungs are filled with air, we are now a walking pressurized tank. The air that we inhale wants to come out. It needs to come out. And when we're initiating this belly tuck, we're pretty much pushing the diaphragm against the lungs. We're trying to squeeze the lungs out of their air. So the air is trying to escape. But because I told you to hold your breath, your vocal cords are acting like a sphincter, like a door, a closed door. So the air can't escape. However, you're pushing your diaphragm against your lungs. The reason why I told you to hold your breath is so that you are aware of this pressure. This is the motor. When we sing, we're not going to hold our breath. That was just me telling you as an example so you get this sensation. When we sing, we have to open our cords and air will go through them. But it's this pressure that is the motor of the singing. That's going to be the resonance. That's going to give you the clarity of the tone. Singing is not static. No, singing is very heavily body active. The air needs to go through a narrow opening in the vocal cords. And because it is a narrow opening, the air will be released laser-like, a stream of air, energized and supported, very much like a pressure tank. Go watch my balloon video, which explains it very well. The same method of what's happening here, you can mimic with a balloon. Repeat the process several times, this time without holding your breath, allowing the air to now escape through the cords, but escape in a pressurized, energized stream of air. Inhale. Expand thoracically. The intercostals, lungs are filled with air, diaphragm descends. That's the inhalation. Now the exhalation. Belly tuck, feeling the epigastric protrusion. There it is, leading there while air is escaping through the cords in a laser-like pressurized stream of air. You can do the TS sensation. You can also just blow. Understanding that you don't want to blow through all your air. No. Very, very controlled. See how that's still engaged? That's your appoggio. Focus here so that you don't focus here. There is no such thing, people, as flexing your abs, pushing out, doing anything weird with your body, because that will immediately create tension in your neck. This belly tuck in and up is breath control. That is the breath control. I talked with Salvatore Fisichella about certain exercises he did with his teacher, Maria Gentile. One of these exercises for breath control was to get a candle with a flame, do exactly what we just did, and as they inhaled and exhaled, they would exhale right in front of the flame. And if the flame was disturbed, then you're doing it incorrectly. You're using way too much of your air. The flame was to be undisturbed. as they breathed. Same thing with their singing. They would get in front of the flame and sing. Ah. If the flame blew out, incorrect. The flame should be undisturbed. Now, if at home you don't have a candle or you don't have a flame, you could grab anything really that can be disturbed by a simple amount of air or breath or wind, such as this paper. We should be able to do this. And not disturb the paper. If you're doing this, continue working on your breath control on the tuck so that it is slow, controlled, and constantly leaning on the appoggio instead of collapsing. That is breath control. That is appoggio. That is what we talked with Salvatore Fisichella, and I have to say it is really refreshing and validating that we think of appoggio and breathing in a very similar manner. I will say this again, there is no pushing, there is no flexing, there is no abnormality other than an extension of your normal thoracic breathing. Anyone telling you otherwise, it's just not the Italian traditional school of singing. Just be aware of that. All right, onwards. Your appoggio will not fix your sound. Let's just get that clear. It doesn't matter how much you practice what we just talked about. If your sound is not correctly taught, it's going to be very difficult to engage your appoggio. You have to fix the sound, and only once the sound is fixed and healthy, then will you feel your body start to engage, your appoggio start to engage. After many vocalizations and trying to puzzle together what he was talking about, I asked Maestro Fisichella, what is his formula for singing? Pretty much 3 things, and those are the 3 things we're going to talk about in depth. Number 1, Gola Aperta, open throat. We mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you don't open your throat, you're practically working with a machine that's not plugged in. It's the on button. As soon as you open your throat, everything starts to activate, right? Larynx goes down, and all the chambers of resonance that normally you wouldn't be able to acquire, with an open throat, you're now ready to activate them. There's 5 chambers of resonance according to Maestro Fisichella. There's your chest cavity, number 1. Your larynx, number 2. Your pharyngeal resonance, very important, probably one of the most important, number 3. Mascara, number 4. Occipital, number 5. A lot of the things that we talked about in my previous videos help with isolating these concepts. Everything we talked about can be applied to this. The yawn position is a great way to start understanding what it's like to constantly be in an open throat position. Speak in the yawn. Don't worry about cord closure yet. Keep it breathy. Keep it easy. Keep it with as little amount of subglottic pressure as possible. You're able to build a healthy environment, an easy environment to just isolate the idea and the concept of Gola Aperta, open throat. This does not mean that you go up on stage and you sing that way. No, it just means we're isolating a concept. Everything we do in opera is sung in that position. Even recitative. You can watch my videos about the yawn and all sorts of that stuff to see what I'm talking about. The idea of cantare come parlare, which is probably one of the most regurgitated quotes I've ever heard, is complete and utter bullshit. We do not cantar come parlar. Unless you parlar like a native Italian who's reciting in an open throat position. Lauri Volpi didn't say cantare come parlare. He said recitar cantando. Recite. Like Shakespearean. Like if you're in a theater and you're reciting a play. Imagine that you are standing in a stage and you're looking at an audience of 10,000 people. I go up there and I say, hello everyone, how are ya? Hope you guys enjoy the show. We have a really, really fun night for you all. No one's gonna hear me. This is conversational speaking. I am parlando in a conversational way. That's incorrect. That's not how we sing. But if I do this, hello everyone! Thank you for being here tonight! We have a great show for you all! I am now reciting. I am using my resonant voice for all to hear. This is how they did back in the Greek amphitheater times. What happens? Immediately, the first thing I do is open my throat so I can be resonant. Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? Shakespeare, I'm doing in a play so people hear me. Singing is an extension of that speaking, of that recitando, of that reciting, not conversational speaking. Hi, how are you? No. Hi, That's why the voice is able to achieve such resonance. And that type of speaking is also very much engaged with the body. It's hitting all 5 chambers of resonance. Gola Aperta. The thing is that someone like Maestro Fisichella, he talks, his conversational talk is reciting. He doesn't know how to whisper. I even try to whisper with Maestro Fisichella, like conversational speaking with Maestro Fisichella, like ciao Maestro, come fai? Tutto bene? He talks to you like he sings. Ciao, ragazzo, come stai? Tutto bene? Sì, hey. It's all resonant already. Most Italians speak that way. They're born taught to speak that way. Clear, precise, pure tone in a resonant manner, pure vowels. A, E, I, O, U. For all of us who are born in the United States, learning the English language, the German language, languages that are more Anglo-Saxon, that are more darker, full of diphthongs, we don't have that ingrained in our body. The idea of speaking in a reciting way, using pure vowels, in a very resonant way. They're born with it. So, cantare come parlare only if you parlare like an Italian native speaker who's in an open throat position. Number 2, Larynge Stretta. This, I would say, was the most puzzling for me. And I really had to talk to him and stop and think what I was doing while I was vocalizing to understand how to achieve this Larynge Stretta or restringimento della laringe without strangling myself. Larynge Stretta means narrow larynx, tighten the larynx. These words I don't think help to capture the correct mental image of what he's talking about. Tighten the larynx isn't a very good mental image to have when you're singing because it can bring tension, which is what was happening to me. I was thinking when he was talking about tighten the larynx, narrow the larynx, pinch the larynx, none of these words really conveyed the right, I think, sensation of what should be happening. And this is probably the most difficult concept to grasp. May take years to grasp. The idea of being able to retain, to keep a gola aperta, an open throat, but also a focal point. A very, very small focal point, squillante, in the sound as we achieve clean, clear chord closure, but in the open throat position. Very, very tricky because the mind is built to think you can either have one or the other. You can either go, or you can go, But you have to understand and you have to trick the mind into thinking it can do both. You can have Gola Aperta and you can have Larynge Stretta. A very, very bright, clear, pure vowel in an open throat position, which again is really the true singing in the mask. Bright vowels in an open throat space. One of the things we talked about modern singing is the loss of pharyngeal resonance. And I have to say that this is probably one of the most things that I just don't hear anymore out there. Because the idea of overspacing has been taught so much throughout the world in opera singing. The idea that you need to overspace for everything, which leads to over darkening singing, ingolato singing, singing that might appear large and big to you, but it's actually quite small in the theater. Maestro Fisichella dislikes this very much. And actually every time I would even try to attempt that, he says, no, stop, canta largo, canta largo. You're singing too wide, too open. No, focal point in that open throat position. So, pharyngeal resonance. This does not mean singing nasal. Let's be very clear about that. It does not mean shoving sound either. He demonstrates exercise such as dang, 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 dang. What is he trying for you to get? It's not about shoving sound or aggressively punching the throat. It's for you to start feeling the buzz, the squealo here. And he used a very important word. He used the key word bifurcation, which honestly, I admit I had to kind of Google to understand what that meant. It means when one path is divided into two, or when one trajectory is divided into two branches. In other words, the sound initiates in the larynx, in the vocal cords. As soon as they vibrate, we have sound. And that sound starts to resonate in all these 5 chambers of resonance. As the sound is being phonated, we can't just think of the sound coming out of the body and through the mouth, and that's it. No, there's almost this division, this bifurcation of the sound escaping through the mouth and through the pharyngeal resonance. It is almost as if the sound is going over the soft palate, which again, if you over widen, if you're the type of person that has taken the yawn position to an extreme, it's going to be very difficult for you to find pharyngeal resonance because you're over spacing. Don't ever do too much of something. It's never the correct way. Singing is very Buddha, very balanced. Sound needs to almost go over the soft palate to be able to, for us to be able to sense it, feel it in that pharyngeal resonance. If you're doing this, you're nasal. If you pinch your nostrils and the sound stops, it means you're shoving sound in the nose. We don't want that. Funny enough, Maestro Fisichella said that Alfredo Kraus was pure nasal. Not my words, don't come after me. We don't want nasality, we want pharyngeal resonance. The squealo should feel in that area, in that mustache region. So here comes what I've been talking about for the last couple of months, this idea of the snarl. I talked to him a little bit about the snarl. This feeling of biting into the sound, this trajectory in which the sound is never straight, the high note is never high, but this feeling of backwardness and then biting into it. He pretty much said, that's cute. He said, that's a nice way of thinking about it. You can go even further. He pictures the sound not just going over and back, but just this never-ending stretch of it just goes over. It just goes over and tall, over and tall. And the snarl isn't just showing your teeth and thinking that you're biting into something. No, it's almost like you're smiling, but not for the sake of smiling, but almost for the sake of showing someone your molars. There they are, here. And then your jaw just dangles very freely, very morbido, dead, relaxed, along with the tongue. They relax from that region. The tip of the tongue always touching the bottom of the teeth. And for those of you who have tongue tension, you could even do a little bit of a tongue flex to make sure that as you're opening the throat, the tongue doesn't follow with it and depresses. He would tell me, your mouth is from here upwards, here upwards. He would grab my cheeks and he says, here. And I'm just like, what is he talking about? Because this is just flesh. Literally talking about the area, the bone structure. Your cheekbones are here. If you feel your cheekbones, and right below them, there's like a little squishy area. There, if you can literally put your fingers there, that needs to be activated. That is where you're gonna feel that pharyngeal resonance. And for a lot of you, even for me, I felt that when I was in this position, I didn't need to raise my soft palate as much as I previously thought. I could keep an open throat, but also feel like the sound is hitting this pharyngeal resonance. And if you look at singers like Gedda or like Salvatore, who's a perfect example, of course, of this bocca di coniglio, bunny mouth, always showing his teeth, always biting into the sound. You realize that they're always in this position. And it's not about overspacing for the high note, it's about focusing, point of focus in the sound. Larynge Stretta, narrow larynx. An exercise that we did a lot to isolate this is grabbing something like a pencil or a pen, and he would put it in my teeth, almost close to the molars, I would say. It's not quite possible to get there because of your cheeks, but pretty close, and activate this plane, allowing the jaw to just dangle there. Never singing wide, never singing down, never thinking compressed, low. No. Singing pure, an extension of speaking, of this reciting. Very pure. And if you start thinking and brainstorming what these old school singers sounded like, you start to realize why they sounded that way. Why it was such a pure, beautiful sound. And it's because of these types of methodologies, these concepts, these singing. There was no over modulating, over corrupting the vowels, or trying to do certain things to try to find the right space. Pure. Takes discipline, takes training, as all good things do, but very pure and clear. And vocalizing with that engagement there. Very bright, very squillante type of sound, which is missing from a lot of opera singing nowadays. This twang, this ping, this brilliance to the voice. Not over darkening your vowels, but the opposite. Brightening your vowels, especially the lower you get, keeping the vowels always bright. One incredibly important thing he talked to me about is as long as you keep Gola Aperta, open throat, Larynge Stretta, narrow larynx, the passaggio is fictitious, doesn't exist. And we did talk about this in one of our previous videos. As long as you maintain this open position with the focal point in the sound, you never have to think, oh, when should I cover? Should I cover here? Should I cover there? Am I covering too early? Should I cover later? Stop thinking that way. It's going to get overcomplicated. Just think maintaining the posture, and then get out of the way. Let the sound go and hit the chambers of resonance it wants to hit. It's going to find its pocket if you just maintain the posture and get out of the way. It's much easier said than done, of course, because most of us, we can open the throat, but as soon as we start singing, it goes right back to our speaking position. We have to maintain this position from the lowest to the highest note on our range. If we do that, the voice will by itself tilt, cover. The vocal cords will thin naturally without having to think about it. There is no such thing as a low register, middle register, high register. It's all one unified voice. With that being said, Maestro Fisichella talks about how even though the voice, when you do this, is unified, the passaggio doesn't exist, it's very smart of a singer to know these points of passaggio in the voice, if you're neurotic like I am, for example, so you can understand what's happening. According to him, there are 3 passaggios in the vocal range of a tenor. The first aria of the passaggio is around B flat to middle C. This is the first feeling that we get of the voice starting to turn, starting to access a little bit more of that head voice quality. The second passaggio is around E4 to G4. This is the passaggio that most of us are more used to. E natural, F, F sharp, G. This is where the tilt absolutely starts to happen. And when we're very much in a much more headier place, we never want to push the passaggio. We never want to fight the tilt, push down, force, tense. In this area, we never want to push this middle part of the voice. And lastly, the third passaggio, A natural, B flat, B natural, the higher range, of course, in which we're now very, very thin. The voice is very much feels like it's coming from behind the head, right? Occipital resonance, it's coming almost out of your forehead. The vocal cords are very thin. The chest voice is there. We're always connected, but it's very thin. The pharyngeal resonance is really what's carrying a lot of that cutting power in the orchestra. Lots of overtones, lots of head voice. When you understand these vocal mechanisms and you allow it, and you're smart enough to also allow the voice to do this naturally, you're going to realize that you can ride this resonance without actually doing much. This idea of Larynge Stretta, narrowing of the larynx, I'm not really doing much actually. The air is actually quite steady. I'm not pushing much with my voice. I'm actually just thinking ping, squealo, 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 and I can ride that all day, and it doesn't cost me a dime. It doesn't cost me anything. Ride that resonance. When you start singing operas that are 3 hours long, you can just kind of fall back into that, and you can save yourself for perhaps more difficult passages in the music or higher notes or whatever it is you want to save yourself for. But you can really ride that. And that has a lot of cutting power without any of the tension, musculature, feeling of pushing that most of us do, thinking that it's going to give more volume, when it's not. It's going to just make us tired, and it's going to dampen the sound, if anything. The higher we go, the less over-widening we want. Over-spacing the high notes is not good. The higher we go, the more of a focal point we need. This is why the high notes on instruments, like a string instrument, is the thinnest string. In wind instruments, it's the smallest hole. In timpanis, it's the smallest space. It's funneling that Gola Aperta posture into a very small, narrow position. And this is what he's talking about, pinching the larynx as we go higher and higher. Any vowel that we're singing up there gets tuned into their close neighborly vowel. A gets tuned into an O to an U, E to an U. So even though we're thinking we're singing A, and we should think that we're singing A as we approach higher and higher, our laryngeal position is that of an O or an U. And this will help as we're finding focal point in the high note, that very, very small, narrow position, it would help lower the larynx. And I'm not even warmed up. As this is happening, obviously always engaging in our support, leaning here instead of leaning here. Always tuning in to that O-U laryngeal position, which elongates the laryngeal tube. Makes it much easier for us to stay in that open throat position. The last step, Bocca Chiusa. You would tell me that the old French school, not the modern, the old school French school of singing was quite competitive with the Italian old school, traditional school of singing. Great singers came out from both of those schools. Was this petite bouche, grande voix. Grande bouche, petite voix. Bocca Chiusa, small mouth. That French quote translates to this: small mouth, big voice. Big mouth, small voice. All this to say that this idea of overspacing that we talked about, trying to sound big, it has no cutting power. It sounds big to you, but very small to the audience. If it sounds small to you, then that means the audience can hear you. This is the curse of the singer. We can't ever listen to ourselves. When everything is functioning correctly, squillante, resonant, open throat, Gola Aperta, Larynge Stretta, Bocca Chiusa, when we're doing the 3 formulas of Maestro Fisichella, it may sound small to us, but it's going to be incredibly resonant to the audience. Fight the temptation to listen to yourselves or try to sound big for yourselves. Little exercises like grabbing a bottle cap, putting it in your teeth, doing that snarl, that smiling, that showing your molars, which is one of the most important things to activate the pharyngeal resonance, and keeping the mouth small, 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 while keeping the throat open, 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 open. And then the higher you go, flip it vertically. Tongue against the bottom of the teeth. And the higher you go, tuning in the sound to an U or an O laryngeal position. This is the way. This is the way, and this is the insight that has been so tremendous after visiting Maestro Fisichella. I love these things. I find it very validating because a lot of these things have been ideas that I've already been applying to my voice. It's just about now taking it to the next level. This idea of this snarl that goes deeper for me than it did before, and applying it now to what I do and integrating it gradually more and more towards my technique. So to recap, other than the appoggio and the breathing that we talked about at the beginning of the video, the formula for singing correctly, all traditional Italian school of singing, according to Maestro Fisichella, 3 steps: Gola Aperta, open throat; Larynge Stretta, narrow larynx, focal point, bright vowels; Bocca Chiusa, small mouth. Do not overspace and not needed. I hope this has been of help to many of you. This might just possibly be the most in-depth video I have made as far as the entire vocal mechanism and vocal technique, speaking about almost all aspects of the vocal technique. I hope this has been of help to many of you, and I hope that you're able to break these 3 concepts down, isolate them, and how to integrate them in your voice in a healthy manner. Let's bring back the beautiful standard of singing that once was. Explore, experiment, find the purity in your voice. Do not mimic, do not impersonate, do not put a fake sound. Study the method of bel canto, beautiful singing, and filter out negative people who may be putting you down. Don't wish for your success. And most importantly, do things that allow you to continue progressing. Progression is evidence of a good teacher or a bad teacher. And get different perspectives. You never stop becoming a student. It was an absolute blessing, dream for me to go and take a lesson with Maestro Fisichella. His knowledge, his wisdom, I can apply to all that I do. Don't ever be diva or egotistical enough to think I am above vocal lessons. No, continue learning, continue searching. Be a student always. Be humble, and like always, the work continues. Ciao, ciao.